Welcome to a Girl in the Product World podcast, dedicated to hearing the stories of the amazing people working in product across so many different industries. People who are building world-class products. People who inspire me. So join me on this podcast, A Girl in the Product World, inspiring me, inspiring you. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of A Girl in the Product World. I'm your host Amna, and today I am joined by Anthony. Now Anthony is a product director for Platform API at NewDay, which is a company dedicated to improving people's credit. With an impressive career thus far, Anthony has worked for the likes of BT, Barclays, HSBC and Apple. He also holds a Bachelors and Masters from Loughborough University and is an absolute product legend. He joins me today to talk through his experiences, which I'm so excited to share with you, the audience. So let's meet him. Anthony, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me, and thanks for the really good intro. I'm really excited to be here, sharing some of my background in product and have a good chat with you, Anna.
Yeah, I absolutely can't wait to get into it. So let's do it. Anthony, you're an API product director at NewDay, as I mentioned before, and you've worked in some incredible spaces. Please, could you just share with us your journey thus far in your career?
Yeah, sure. I didn't land in the product. I've started as a product designer, actually. So I did my degree as a product designer. I kind of landed on a job with Apple as a first career, which is fantastic, doing design, actually product design. So as a young designer, going to Apple, thinking that I can do everything. Clearly, Apple have a really standard way of doing it and design pattern. So kind of let me start to think, actually, I want to do my own thing. So, and back then, the financial industry has always been like where all my friends goes and getting paid well, etc. So that's why I've become a kind of graduate scheme in HSBC. So you mentioned that. And through HSBC, I've been touching loads of different products, from credit risk, current account. And then in 2017, everyone starting those transformation program, like digital transformation, etc. So that can't really bring me into like API, because I'm obsessive with knowing how things work. So that's kind of bring me to how does actually all this beautiful journey that people are creating, all this digital transformation, and actually underlying or driving all that is application programming interface. So that brings me into like, how do we actually piece everything together from a technical perspective? So, and then I kind of jumped into Barclays, leading their kind of API platform. They've started, and apart from transformation back then, people are talking about like platform as a product, the platform strategy, platform business. So in Barclays, I was leading the API exchange team, essentially productizing our API. So I think my passion has always been in product, and that shows. An API is a product in its own right, and I've been kind of talking about that as well. And then essentially, because API is a product in its own right, it kind of breaks down the silos between industry. So that's why on my resume, after Barclays, I moved into telco. Again, looking at cloud voice as a product, how does the API framework works? How do you actually build and measure the good API product? And then it's fallen to this job, the latest job in NewDay. I got approached and say, we're a credit company, but we want to be a tech business. And actually what drives a tech business is really good API product and forming a platform. So I was kind of asked to kind of lead a team to say, okay, what does NewDay look like in terms of a platform business? So that's bring me here. Try to change NewDay from a credit company to a tech business.
That's excellent, and I mean your passion is so clear when it comes to API, and you said something really interesting there, which is, API is a product in its own right, which is absolutely true, and you wouldn't normally think of it in that way. You just kind of think of it as part of a product, kind of part of the bigger picture, and that's really cool. Now, you've obviously you've worked your way up to product director, and I feel like that's a title that's becoming more and more common. I think as and especially kind of within that fintech financial services world as well. What does that mean? Because I think you're so passionate about the API side of things. I think naturally, as you kind of move up, you kind of have to look at things from a bird's eye view as well, right? It becomes more part of the strategy side of things. So what does being a product director actually mean within that space?
I think one thing that never changed when you work in the product is identify what the problem to solve for our customer, for people. And I think when you move throughout this journey as a product leader, I think the key thing is identify the problem that you need to solve, kind of validate the problem and what's the best way to solve it. And I think when we talk about people here, it's not just about the customer, but it's also most importantly about the people building the product with you. And I think that's kind of differentiate like a product manager treating the squad as kind of people just building the thing to a director to actually building a culture to say, actually, how do we get our people to understand the problem, to validate the problem, but also create an innovative solution. So I think that's kind of what my job is. But from a director perspective, I think not only you need to know about your product really well, the wider landscape and the competitor as well as the customer, but also most importantly, the people. Are the people happy building the product? Do they feel empowered to innovate? Because if people are constantly under stress, they deliver things, then the innovation drop. So I think as a director, you really need to do. And lastly, strategy you mentioned, right? So I think it's important to not just be too short-sighted about what's the product roadmap going to be, but also like looking further ahead in terms of what is the potential problem that people is going to face, especially the expectation of our customer are changing very rapidly as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can attest to the culture side at NewDay, which, no doubt is something that trickles down from director level downwards. And it's a very, it seems like a very nice environment and one that people feel very empowered within as well. And I can tell that that connection with people is something that is very important too, but also the environment at NewDay, which is fantastic to see. And I think especially in this day and age where things are a little bit rocky within the financial services world, it's just lovely to see that matter so much to a leader within the product world. And I'm going to go into your experiences within financial services as well. And I think you've probably touched on this a little bit, but given you have huge amount of experience within financial services and the fintech world, what is it about this industry that matters to you the most?
I think, first of all, disregard the industry, I think product is a very interesting kind of discipline or ways of working and thinking, right? So I enjoy solving problems for people and crafting product that really touches people and improve people's life. And I think that's fundamentally it. So why the financial industry? Essentially, historically, financial industry has always been very transactional. You open a current account, you put some money in, etc. But in the last 10 years, I would say the customer expectation changes rapidly. Actually, the value is to overlay human-centric design and people and experience and product thinking into kind of this very transactional experience, right? And essentially, I think when I was in HSBC, with everyone doing the transformation program, there's a really strong line in terms of things just need to work. No one wake up one day and say, I'm going to open a current account, or I'm going to buy a house, or I'm going to get a credit card. People have dreams. They want to purchase something or purchase an experience or buying a home. So I think that's why this industry. So that's where the innovation lies, right? The marginal innovation in terms of actually how can we make it quicker to onboard a customer? How can we kind of say yes to more people from a credit perspective? And these are where the innovation and technology use. And I think fundamentally it's even more important, as the saying go, like you can't look at the technology, work backwards to the customer experience and customer will solve. So it's super important in this industry to say, actually, what is the customer trying to achieve? Going back to my point, actually, they want a mortgage, but actually, they don't want a mortgage, they want a home. And I think that's the lens that we need to get through, especially in the financial industry, that the transactional kind of get overwhelmed. But now, obviously, we're changing with all this new fintech coming in to say, how do we solve the problem to make people's life better? Especially in NewDay, we also, how do we actually help our customers to move forward with credit, etc. So I think those are the kind of those are the cycle that we go through in this industry in terms of innovation. So first, you kind of have to meet the customer expectation, then you kind of have to exceed it, and then lastly, when you're kind of leading it, you define the customer experience. This is how things should work within the financial industry, and there's so many opportunities now, and that's why it's so exciting.
I love that. I love that last bit that you said as well. It's just those stages that you have to go through when you're going through innovation, because innovation sometimes is a bit of an abstract idea, but there is that endpoint, right, where you're kind of setting that standard. Now you have innovated, and then that cycle just keeps going on and on. I absolutely love that analogy. And now, coming on, that you obviously we're product people, it's our bread and butter. But I think just to level down from that, another bit that is our bread and butter is prioritization.
Yes.
And it's a huge area in our field, given the many different avenues of product, and certainly within API development can take. We have many methods to help, and opinions to guide us. How do you prioritize, particularly at a direct level where you have this ambition to be innovative and there may be different ways of doing things? How do you prioritize at that level?
Yeah, I think many people have different take, and this is a hot topic for product people in terms of prioritization in different companies, right? So first of all, if we step back a little bit in terms of what is prioritization, I think it's kind of like a mechanism and process to select critical step to get to a goal in a certain agreed time frame. And I think a common vision and goal is the key, right? So again, I have a different take, because people say, oh, this company is not really prioritizing things, or not very good at prioritization, etc. The board doesn't know how to prioritize, etc. But I think that the problem here is it's not about being good at prioritization. It's about having alignment on the vision that you're trying to get to. Prioritization is hard because it creates focus, but at the same time, it's make it even harder if the company is not pulling in the right direction or in the same direction. So actually, to solve the prioritization problem, it's not about getting better prioritization. It's actually getting everyone aligned to, this is where we want to go. And then it will organically come in terms of what to prioritize. Just a really kind of live example will be, I'm saving up loads of money, but I'm actually prioritizing to go on holiday, while my wife might be prioritizing actually doing something else. So it's very hard, right? So again, it's alignment, and that's come from a very strong vision, a very strong mission statement for your company, and all the people need to align to that vision. And then prioritization should be a lot relatively simple. But obviously in real life, in different company, they will have kind of different kind of, what does good look like, what is the values. So I think, going back to your point about prioritization, how do I prioritize? I look at values. I look at, we have in my team, especially looking at our company vision, which is a very strong one. How does our value deliver to those? So we talk about sprints and how we actually prioritize our work in sprint planning. I ask all my product people to ensure that, make sure that your backlog and what you're delivering day in, day out, deliver to those 5 key value drivers, whatever that way may be, because that is the only way and clear way to do it. And of course, there's different tools to do that, the Moscow's rise, etc. But I think fundamentally, we need to get the vision right before you even try to attempt to tackle the prioritization problems.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense. Now, I want to dive into that a little bit more, because you say, everyone's got to be aligned and aligned to the company vision. Now, I think naturally when people think of that, they think that's more of a top-down approach. The vision comes from somewhere up top, trickles down and to the product teams, and they understand it and make sure that there is alignment. Then they go on to do whatever they need to do to plan their sprints and prioritize, etc. Now, something that I find quite interesting is, I personally don't think that needs to be the way. I feel that people on the ground, they have a lot more awareness of the data, and they're kind of fighting those fires. So when you say product vision, do you feel that is more of a top-down thing, or do you feel also that can be a two-way communication where the team's also informing that vision? How do you see forming the vision working?
I think from a high level, a company vision at a CEO director level is a very direction of travel. So it's about making that tough call to say we are not going to operate in this area because we're better in this area. Going back to your point from bottom up, I think the innovation needs to come, but actually you need to ladder up to that. So what I'm trying to say is from a bottom up approach, from a domain. So for example, in my team, there is different domain looking after different capability. And those people can innovate. They really can innovate to solve those values. So there's different way of delivering values, right? So, but they all have their own vision with the team, and that is work with the team. But those are the things that will ladder up to the overall vision of the company. So give you an example for company who I want to be a platform business. This is where we want to operate it. But within that platform, there's different capability. So in my team, we look after identity as a capability. So the vision for that is how can we make it as seamless as possible to identify a customer? And that is a vision that particular domain have the product owner and the product manager have worked with teams to drive that. And you make a really good point. I think it's important because only a vision that's relatable to you really want to drive it, right? So I do workshop and put up the company vision and say, what does that mean to you for your team? So it all kind of intertwine. It's not about this is what you need to do and this is how you do it, because then you don't need product people to do that, right? So I think that's really key. You need to own it. It needs to come from you, but it also needs to align up. So that's kind of my view.
I love that. I absolutely love it. And I love that it's coming from, a leadership level, because being brought in, like you say, it's got to be relatable, right? You've got to really feel it. And I feel that is the kind of environment where teams really thrive, because they feel that sense of ownership, and they really do feel that responsibility to then deliver according to whatever the company vision is.
Yeah, and I think that's important, not just from a product perspective, right? Because the engineers, like people that at the beginning of the interview, we talk about it's important for people to understand the why. They are not just there to code and build things, right? And they need to have a kind of, I would say, go as far as emotion attachment to your product and the things that you're building. That's when you get really good innovation and really good product. And I think it's not just for product people, it's for engineers to have that product thinking, to understand what is the vision that they're trying to drive, and day in, day out. It's not just about pushing tickets from left to right.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Right, we're going to switch subjects a little bit, and we're going to come to a subject that's important to both of us. Actually, and quite relevant, given it was recently International Women's Day. Now, being a woman in tech and product, I'm always interested to know a man's perspective on the challenges that we face. I think companies have come under quite a lot of scrutiny, particularly tech companies, in terms of diversity and good representation for women. What are some of the challenges that you think we need to focus on more, and how do you think we tackle them? And I ask that particularly within the sphere of the tech world.
I think from a tech perspective, you say it's underneath a lot of scrutiny. I think there's definitely more company can do, and it's not a tick box exercise. And I think that's the key here. I'm glad to say that, like in my team, 75% of the product people are women. So I think that shows that there is very good capability and characteristic in that sense. One of the key things that I've observed, interview loads of candidates, both men and women, is there is kind of a sense of self-doubt. Again, that's something that I've seen a lot. To give you an example is I came out of an interview with a very, very talented, which I hired, woman. At the end of the interview, I feel like she's trying to convince me not to hire her. But actually, throughout the interview, she's been showing exactly all the kind of good caliber of what product people should have. And I think one of the key things that I want to kind of share is for kind of just in candidate or women in general is focus on the value you can bring to the business or organization you want to join, rather than looking at the gaps. Because I think there's a tendency to do that, to say I need to know more than 100% to something to do that. And I think that's really, there's so many kind of good kind of characteristic that is so useful in product, like people skills in terms of understanding how people work emotionally as well. So I think there's lots a woman can bring in the product world. So that's one thing. And second thing is, I think men tend to, like, going back to my point around like focus on what value you can bring, men tend to kind of shine light on those things and magnify it as well, which women don't tend to naturally do. And last thing I want to cover is communication. So I think that is because of the kind of not lack of confidence, but like second thinking about everything, there is communications as well. So imagine you are 10 out of 10 technically, but the communication style or confidence is 3 out of 10. People will perceive you as 3 out of 10, right? So if you are 10 out of 10 in communication and confident, but you're actually 5 out of 10, people will get a better sense, right? So I think really look at how you communicate and really look at how you kind of convey your message is really key. And lastly, there's loads of, I think allied is really important. So I encourage all my product managers, mentoring all the young women out there. So I kind of sign up all to the STEMICs. I think is something that NewDay support. And I think it's super important for younger generation to see that as well, and have what was the shining example, was the kind in that world. Especially I got two daughters myself, so that's something that I always want to kind of nurture and say, actually, women can do great stuff in product.
I'm screaming inside. that is so great to hear. And you're absolutely right. Like, and I talk about this, you know, when I'm either speaking to other women or, you know, during my women's retreats as well, is that fact of, you know, women tend to generally not go for something where they don't tick every single box on a job description, whereas men will do the opposite. And it's almost at kind of like a 50%. If I don't tick 50% of those boxes, I shouldn't go for it. And I think the key thread that you've mentioned through all of your points there is just confidence, right? It's just that bringing that confidence that people will latch onto. And then if there is a lack of confidence, people will also latch onto that, right?
Yes, and I think it's confidence, and through confidence you will build good communication skills, right? So I think that's important. And I think the key bit is really look into what you're good at and really shine a light on it. And I think that's really important. Like, don't just look at the things that you're not good at, or you think you're not good at. And I think that's the key in terms of mindset.
Brilliant. I love it. And going on from that inspirational, those inspirational points for women also, Anthony, I would love to know, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received, or your own advice that you'd like to give out to the world?
There's one that I've recently read. I don't know whose quote it is the work everyone sees happens because of the work no one sees. And I think that's quite important, especially in this world now with social medias and like everyone is showing the best side of everything. And especially from a product perspective, a platform, no one sees the platform. Everyone sees the shiny experience that it delivers, right? So I think that's really important. As in this world, sometimes you might be kind of struggling with stress and thinking you're not enough, not doing enough, etc. You look back, there's so many things that you've done people can see, but actually behind that there's lots of hard work going in. And I think it's important to always remind yourself that. Another one that I've got is around product. So I've been leading into the product journey. So one that I've always used is delivering a product successfully is not the same as delivering a successful product, because loads of companies try to change the project to product mindset, but that is fundamentally it. Just because you deliver a product in a set time frame doesn't mean that product is successful. That's why the product thinking is always ongoing, is kind of product thinking and product development never stop. It's always about improving it. So I think those two kind of lines really kind of tied into the way that I work and the way that I want to build culture within different companies.
Anthony, I could speak to you all day about this, but we've got to end it there because you can go on for hours. But this has been an absolute pleasure. And to the audience listening, honestly, having Anthony on was a dream for me, because he is someone that I you know, over the last, I think maybe a year or so that we've known each other, every time I've spoken to him, I always walk away from that conversation just feeling like, wow, this guy, I just know he's having the best impact wherever he's working. People who are working for him are very fortunate, because I just know he's exemplifying this great leadership. And that's why I'm so excited to bring this episode to everyone, to show that inspirational leadership is definitely out there, and it's being exemplified by people like Anthony. So Anthony, thank you so much for being on and sharing your experiences and all your responses, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you so much for having me, Emma. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.